Myself as a 16-year-old dad trying to figure out how do I become something of myself so that my son could be proud of me.
Welcome to Focus Focus. Voices leading change.
I've been focusing on looking at a lot of startup work, and it's been really interesting to me to find out the patterns and trends that actually permeate through my own life, built on some of the deliberate decision making I made when it came back to my own career and the progress of my career. And I want to set that tone for us as we've arrived obviously at Future Focus Early Learning and some other aspects, but ultimately it has been my ability to deliberately and intentionally carry out actions that have got me to certain points. There's a saying that I've kind of adopted that I built for myself in the last few years, which is that today's skills will not suit tomorrow's dreams. And that's built on the idea that understanding that if I'm going to have the opportunity to step into a realm where there's new experiences that turn up and we can actually be part of those experiences, that I have to continue to work on my daily destiny in order to achieve what's coming tomorrow. And that's a key theme of this podcast. There's some factors to when it comes to growth and experiences and opportunity and ultimately success that are critical to understand, but I want to address one aspect first: luck. Now, it could be quite contentious. We all, as a country, like to see aspects of luck step in and commit to helping us exceed what we're trying to do and achieve. But I want to challenge the validity of luck, as some people used to say to me, you could create your own luck. Luck as a factor is certainly a little bit of a contributing factor to people's success. For example, it is lucky that Cortez arrived in my life when I was 16. I'm lucky for that. A very tough situation to be lucky out of, and I can only see the luck as I've progressed further in life. But what I want to talk to you about, why that is an opportunity for me to see luck as a factor in this, is because if it wasn't for Cortez, then I wouldn't realise the struggles of teenage parents. Then I wouldn't realise the struggles of a child born into a situation of having teenage parents. And ultimately, I wouldn't have realised that the only way that I could, at that time, make a break out of that factor was education. It was education that gave me the break. So it is lucky that Cortez came into my life in 1999. It is lucky that he came into my life as a 16-year-old kid. It is lucky that he came into my life and pushed me to make deliberate and intentional decisions about my future and building opportunities for myself. And I want to start there as a real aspect to focus on. I had teachers who stepped into my life and really, really helped me. They were the ones that built a platform for me, an environment for me to thrive. Is it luck that I ran into those teachers? For sure. For sure, I could have been put into other classes, and I could have actually been a pain in the backside to them. They might not have seen the value and vision that I carried with myself as a 16-year-old dad trying to figure out how do I become something of myself so that my son could be proud of me. Is it luck that they had an ability to carry a level of energy that supported my energy and allowed me to be who I wanted to be? Yeah, of course that's luck. That is certainly luck. But I had to be very deliberate about those situations to draw as much energy out of it while giving back as much energy as I could too. It was critical in those times to realize that yes, luck certainly helped me get into those positions, but if it wasn't for me taking those opportunities and continually working on my skill set in that time, that I was able to actually capitalize on those situations. Future Focus has been around since 2019. We opened around end of January, I think Jan 21st, 2019. And we've obviously gone on to have, scale and what we believe is success, and not just in the typical terms of a financial element, but also, which we are more proud of, is in terms of creating community impact and continually working on that scenario that allows us to make sure that people feel supported in their own workplace and environments and have an ability to grow. But I want to come back to it. I started out as a teacher. My first year at uni was in 2001. I became a teacher because I felt like I could do a better job than the teachers that I had had. I went to university. My first, at Waikato University, I was the first in my whānau to go to university from my mum and dad's side, from both my mum and dad's side. I went up there as a very, very fresh university student, and in the facts of what was coming up for me, my first ever assignment that I handed in to Vivian Hendy in Learning and Teaching Health, I got an E, and not an E for Everest or E for excellent, an E in the grading. I was mortified to the point I actually believe I nearly cried. In fact, I probably did. And if it wasn't pure luck, Vivian Hendy, who was Dr. Vivian Hendy, came and found me in the class, and she said, "Look, I need to talk to you about your assignment." She pulled me into her room and she sat down. The first thing she said to me was, "Ray, your handwriting's terrible. You cannot handwrite assignments." I said, "I don't have a computer." And she said, "Okay, come on, I'll show you. Have you been shown the labs?" I said, "No." So she took me down to the computer labs. She showed me that. She showed me how to get a card to put credit on and go in so you can use the computers and use the printers and things like that. And then from there, obviously, I started typing up my assignments. She actually allowed me to resubmit. You can only go up by one grade, so I managed to get to a D. But that was the start of my academic journey. Is it luck that situation arose? Yep. But again, it was the deliberate intention of making sure that I said the truth. I don't have a computer. No, I don't know about the computer labs. Oh, yes, I am broke and I have to figure out how to get money onto this card so I can go in. It is the deliberate and intentional practices that allowed me to actually capitalize on luck. Fast forward, this is where we are at in terms of going down that channel of education and building into what Future Focus is today. I also want to just carry on backwards into some of the other aspects that really allow me to dig into being deliberate and intentional. One thing I read is that the best way to predict your future is to go out and build it yourself. Now, I am an optimistic person by nature. I have always been a very optimistic person. I think optimism is a really important facet. I'm not blindly optimistic, except for the Warriors. This year's our year. But I am a massive optimist built on the factors of what I get to do in the day to influence optimism as an aspect to rely on. Optimism as a tool is important if you know and understand that you must be intentional and deliberate with your actions to enable the optimism to come to life or increase the probability of optimism to come to life. I set a goal very early on in my education aspect that I would become principal as soon as I could. I was very optimistic that I could go out and work on the skill sets needed to become a principal as early as I could. That meant taking a job in new entrants instead of what I favoured to be my better strength, which was intermediate. I went and worked in new entrants teacher with Jan Whaley, and that was massively beneficial for me. I then took on every single role I could, organising kapahaka, running sports. I was running lunchtime programs, after school programs, everything I could to continue to express and deliver on their leadership capabilities that are needed to become what I perceive to become a great principal. Those sorts of things were important while still performing in the classroom and allowing children to achieve and grow and continue their academic rigour. I was very intentional about a lot of that stuff. I was very optimistic that what I was doing with that was going to lead to greater opportunities in that sense. And when I was tapped on the shoulder and said, "Hey, there's a principal's role coming out, and I think you should apply for it," that was it. I felt confident that my optimism was there, backed up with skill and intention and deliberate actions that it will allow me to actually capitalise on what was in front of me. Now, I want to do a quick waiver on this. I thought I'd crushed the interview. I actually thought I'd really crushed it. And once I actually got the job of the principal of Te Ako Primary School over in Ngārua Wahia, I sat down with the board chair and I said to him, I'd love some feedback from the interview. And he looked at me and he said, "Yep, no, you interviewed terribly." And of course I was mortified. I was like, "What?" because I carried optimism. I was intentional about my actions. I was very deliberate in saying I wanted to be principal young and all this sort of stuff. He says, nah, you were terrible. He said, you spoke over everyone's heads. No one understood what you were talking about. We knew it was obviously good, but we didn't know what you were talking about, and it didn't relate to us. I said, well, why'd you give me the job? He said, because Tony, your principal, said there's something in you and that we should probably back that. So is that luck? Yeah. Yeah, I'm lucky that I had a principal that advocated for my skill set. I'm lucky that I worked with a leader that advocated for who I was as an individual, unique, but certainly someone who was going to bring value to the future of Te Ako Primary School. I was very lucky that I built a situation that allowed someone in a position of power to actually advocate for me. But when I think back to that situation, and what I pat myself on the back about is that Tony had optimism and enough reason to vouch for me as an individual, to back me, and to say something along the lines of, hey, Ray's going to go out and do great things, might be with your guys' school, might not be, but he certainly needs to be backed. It's a very important part of my story. When I stop back and reflect, and I read books like 0 to 1 and things like that, and it's some of the themes that you'll see me often talk about is you must continue to work on yourself today so that opportunities present themselves tomorrow. And that means that you are proving yourself as a concept, not to anyone else, but internally, that when those opportunities arise, your intention and deliberate actions are going to matter. I often talk about building environments that allow people to thrive. If we're not building environments that allow people to thrive and ultimately win, and that's where I'm really generating a lot of energy in my own thought patterns, then we're not doing great things, because it was Tony in that situation that I had the fortunate luck of him having a chance to advocate for me that allowed me to progress up very quickly into my principalship. And the last thing, which I think is really, really important to understand when it comes to forging your own future, is that when we get up every morning, we get to choose our attitude. We get to choose how we are grateful for the things in our life. We get to walk in the room with a big smile and an optimism that allows us to pick up the energies of those around us. And ultimately, we get to go out and win the day on our terms, based on our beliefs, on our intentions, and on our deliberate actions, in the hope for a better future for ourselves. Up the wires.